Good morning, everybody. John Sfielkla here for GAI Insights, bringing you the Gen AI news, essential, important, or optional, adding time to your day, and we hope insight to your mind. Anyway, let's get at it. We've got some interesting stuff in terms of new capabilities or new point of view from Inflection, all the way through some other product announcements. All right. Let's go ahead and start here where Inflection helps fix real life human feedback uniformity with unique models for enterprise AI. Ankash, take us in.
Thanks, John. So the first one that we have for today comes from Inflection AI, and it talks about how Inflection has these models for
Ankash, you
enterprise
there?
and agentic.
All right,
I
we
hear
haven't got
him.
it. Oh, go ahead.
I hear him.
I think you're having a audio problem, John.
All righty, go ahead. You guys lead till I figure out what's going on. Okay.
Go ahead, Ankash.
Yes. So this one from Inflection AI talks about how they can fix RLHF uniformity for enterprise and
So
agentic AI.
please go ahead and David, will you go ahead and lead till I figure out what's wrong with my connection?
Yeah, we're still continuing. All right, Tim, what did you think about this one?
I think it's interesting. I think it's optional. It's a new approach. They're going to try. Inflection is on the enterprise track, so they're trying to differentiate themselves in terms of what they can offer enterprises. And so what they're saying is, hey, we will use a different approach that is more attuned to what your organizational culture feels and more attuned to emotion, although they didn't really explain how they got to that part. But they did talk about using employee feedback as opposed to sort of generic human feedback by a large language model company to try and tune it more to the culture of your company. So it's an interesting idea, but it's a big announcement. We'll see how it works and if it does make a difference in how these models talk back, if you will, and interact with people.
Yeah, and it's interesting the way that they've trained it before you have your employees do some further training on it. Is that they've used 36,000 teachers and other related professionals to give feedback, whereas typically right now companies are going overseas, and we've read many stories about workers that are doing the reinforcement learning feedback, and they're getting paid poorly and treated poorly, etc. So here we've got a different approach there, which is interesting. I have not used Pi actually to test it to see.
Pi is actually good.
Yeah.
Well, it was good. I assume it's this model, and they haven't changed it, so it's pretty good. It's one of the frontier models.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see if this helps the company get some wind under its sails again, but we'll go optional for now. What's next, Sankaj?
Okay, the next one comes from Wired, and it talks about how the race to block OpenAI scraping bot is slowing down after OpenAI has made a spree of licensing agreements.
Right. So as we know, OpenAI has made several deals with publishers now where they can legitimately use their content to train their models. And as a result, those publishers are taking the robots.txt file out, which means that the website could be scraped. But obviously, OpenAI now has a direct feed to those publishers that it has a deal with, so it doesn't really need to scrape them. And that's what this article is about. So for me, it's completely optional. Tim, I don't know if you had any other ideas on it.
No, I think it's the obvious statement being reported. So yes, they paid money. They now have access to the content. The robots.txt issue is a larger issue in general, but this is just about OpenAI and their licensing deals, and they paid the money, and the people agreed, and they're going to get the content. As you pointed out, it's really independent of robots.txt because they're not even going through the normal scraping mode because they now have a deal, so they just get direct feeds.
Right. Although I guess now other model makers could feasibly be using it and feel better about themselves.
No. You can specify, robots.tech can specify specific things. So
Okay.
again, this whole area of SEO, and it's such a disaster. I mean, because nobody can refuse Google, right? Because if you refuse Google, you're not in Google search. And the interesting question is, will OpenAI or others get to that point on LLM models? Well, we'll just say, well, okay, fine, we just won't include you.
Right. Right. All right. We will go optional.
Google's in trouble because they go as far as telling you better not let Microsoft in, as an example.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. But optional. We'll go optional on to the next. Kaj.
Okay, the next one is a research paper. It's titled Tutor CoPilot, how they are using a human AI approach for scaling real-time expertise.
Right. So this is an article from Stanford researchers who actually were the ones who created this Tutor CoPilot, which helps a tutor basically tutor the students better. So it gives them some cues to make sure that they can give the student cues themselves that help them come to the answer on their own rather than giving them the answer. And that's a more effective way of teaching. And they did a proper study on their tool to see if it actually improved the tutor's performance and the student's performance. And they did find a statistically significant improvement in that performance. Tim, what do you think about this one?
Well, I think it's quite interesting, and I've had a long interest in education. I think, part of me says, gosh, the way I talk about this is like using a front end loader to dig a garden ditch, because really you could write a very simple rules-based system that did, I think, exactly the same thing as this, much cheaper, much more straightforwardly, without having to involve a large language model. Maybe I'm wrong about that, because the ability to put in full sentences and more context, slightly more context, maybe that's really helpful. But honestly, what they did looks pretty straightforward, that you could do with like 10 rules. And so it's a little bit of overkill to do with an LLM. But the idea is good, and they got some modest improvement with their measurements. So, it's a research paper, I guess I would say. Interesting. I might rate it important in that category of, if you have time to read this, it might be interesting if you're interested in education, but it's sort of on the margin for an AI leader in terms of their day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, I was feeling this one was optional for our AI leaders. It's a nice story, right? And it'll be great if this helps in the education field. And we know there's lots going on in education when it comes to plugging some LLMs into the mix there. But I'm thinking for our AI leader, we're going to spare them the time on this one and go optional. Let's go to the next one, Ankash.
The next one comes from Google DeepMind, and it talks about augmented object intelligence with XR objects.
Yes, lots of fancy terminology here to say that basically in augmented reality, as you can see from this video here, that you would be able to kind of interact with an object and see some prompts pop up that label it. You could ask questions about it. For example, what's the nutrition profile of this apple? You could be cooking and, set a timer on the pot that shows up in the photo, and you can ask, what else could I put into this recipe? Definitely see where this is going, right? In terms of the headsets that Meta and others are starting to create. Apple, of course, this is Google that's done this study, but we know where all of this is headed. What do you think about this, Tim?
Well, I think it's good. This is what AR is supposed to be about. I don't think it's revolutionary. I think they put a lot of things together and done it well. If this works, right, it's a research thing. So I think it's a good idea. These ideas are 50 years old, so okay. I'm not impressed by the revolutionary concepts. You can go back to Smalltalk and Squeak and these other systems that had this idea of objects with handles appeared, and so the interface is not really all that exciting and revolutionary. But the use of bounding and depth perception, all that stuff to make it real for objects in the physical world is nice. I would say optional for the general AI leader. If you're in this space that's doing AR, then this is more important to pay attention to this stuff. But that's again a fairly limited subset of organizations that are actually developing technologies for AR. So if you're an AR developer, this is quite important, maybe essential. But if you're a general AI leader, I would call it optional. Interesting, but optional.
Yeah, you're back, John. You want to enter back in with an opinion on this one?
Optional.
All right.
Yeah, no, Tim said it well.
Okay, we're going optional. We're optional across the board here. We've got one more left. Let's see.
No hitter, baby. No hitter.
What do we have last one here?
Yeah, so the last one that we have comes from OpenAI and Altera. So Altera is using GPT-4o to build a new area of human collaboration.
Right, so they've built a digital agent that can play, I believe it was Minecraft with you for 4 hours. They've put it's pretty interesting that they've put some capabilities together to give rise to this. What do you think about this, John?
I thought it was really not that interesting in terms of. I mean, it's kind of cool in terms of having an autonomous agent being able to cruise around. I didn't quite understand why I can only do it for 4 hours, but the notion of having an autonomous agent go out and do things in a game environment, I think is interesting. I think it's totally optional for our AI leader right now. I don't see I don't see really the importance of either the innovation nor certainly its commercial application. I don't see. So I was giving it an optional.
Yeah, I was seeing the commercial application being, this is like your virtual coworker down the road, right?
I could see that, but
you brainstorm.
Yeah, you can see this in pair programming and things like that. But I agree, it's optional. It's not that exciting, and it's interesting. Again, there's lots of people trying lots of different architectures to create these kinds of true co-workers, whatever you want to call them. And I think the reason it's hard to make them last a long time is because the feedback loops start to degrade the responses.
I see.
So it's that's what they said. I can't swear. I'm not an expert in that part. There are problems definitely with memories in these LLMs over time, but I think there are pair programming things out there right now that are pretty good. So I'm not sure what the limitations on this one were.
Well, if I get to choose my worker in the future, I'm going for SpongeBob. I like to wake up and, hey, SpongeBob, how are you today?
Yeah.
Although I've never really watched the cartoons. I was a huge cartoon fan when I was a kid, but I haven't watched much of SpongeBob.
Yeah.
My kids were too old for that.
It's an enormously important area over time because, as we've said many times, especially if you embed them within robots, there just aren't enough people in the world. The demographics are terrible. And so for people who are, lying in a hospital bed ill, or older people who don't have a caregiver, these things can provide a lot of comfort if you can really make them work. So there's lots of potential, but definitely optional for the moment.
All righty. Looks like we are headed for a no-hitter.
I think so.
All right. Well, that's good. Give people time back. Nothing to worry about today in the AI landscape.
The conference can concentrate without having to be distracted and catching up on the reading.
Is there another article, or is that it?
That's it.
All righty.
Oh, I must have read it somewhere else. There wasn't an article about the guy who did the chain of thought and combination and it's an interesting article. There was an interesting article I read this morning somewhere about a programmer who had trouble with his English, but and should have used ChatGPT on the essay. But the essay itself was quite interesting because he put together chain of thought reflection and one other technique, and he got Claude 3.5 up to OpenAI preview, O1 preview in terms of performance.
We should review it for tomorrow. It's not on the list for today, Tim,
okay.
So.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Interesting. It was interesting. Yeah.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, here I am at the conference. We've got lots going on here. And I think we had a pretty successful day yesterday. Got lots going on today. We're starting off with a case study about Harvey. We're going to talk about competitive advantage, how to pick projects, and we're going to have the governor's head of economic development, Yvonne Howe, come and talk. And we're going to stop and end the day with mass robotics. We're going to have a robot cruising around and some other thoughts about the state of robotics. So it's really quite a energetic and fantastic audience here. So all good. And we will be sending out materials after for those of you who couldn't join us here. But we are looking at an optional day. All right, Ankash, looks like we don't need the thing as they're all going to be optional. Newsletter will go out later. And anything else to announce, David or Tim or Adam?
Terrific. Absolutely terrific day yesterday. Lots of really interesting presentations from the field. It's a really different conference field because it was really people who are in the trenches doing actual work in corporations in various environments, and not just a lot of presentations from vendors talking about how great they are. So
yeah,
really refreshing.
And startups and investors and private equity.
And Adam was awesome. So congrats to Adam with the prompting. That's just a lot of fun to watch live on stage, somebody doing this prompting and just making the magic happen.
Adam's a rock star. He's the Metallica of prompts. All righty, man.
Okay.
We'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye-bye now. Thank you.
Bye.